Welcome to the West Ham Voice on a Thursday morning. Thank you all for joining me. I hope your week has been good so far. Looks like we finally made a signing. It's been 25 days in the January transfer window, with only something like 6 days to go, and it looks like Kalvin Phillips is a West Ham player. But let's go back just a little bit. Well, let's go back 2 years. Cast your minds back to January 2022. Now, West Ham United were doing exceptionally well, if you can recall that far back. We just finished the calendar year, the 2021 calendar year, by smashing Watford 4-1 away from home, which after 19 games took us to 5th in the league with 31 points, 9 points from safety, as many would say. But on a serious note, we were 4 points behind Arsenal, and we were doing exceptionally well in the league. If you also recall, we were doing really well in Europe, a bit like now, high up in the table, through to the last 16 of the then Europa League, and everything was looking rosy. But in order to continue that push, one thing that we really needed was, in that January window, to sign a few players, even if it was just one, just to feel like we were freshening the squad up in some ways. But also, we had injuries to a number of players. At the time, Kurt Zouma was in the team, out of the team with various injuries, hamstring injuries, etc. And of course, Angelo Ogbonna, back in November 2021, suffered the cruciate ligament damage, the cruciate ligament tear, which kept him out for the rest of the season. So it wasn't just to get players in just for the sake of it, but we kind of needed a bit of a freshening up of the squad, because it was, we were heading in the right direction in the league. We were heading in the right direction in terms of Europe as well. And many of us thought that the reason why we didn't finish that season as strong as we would have liked to is because we just didn't freshen things up in that January window. Now, okay, we finished 7th in the league in that season. It earned us a spot in the Europa Conference League. We reached the semi-finals of the Europa League, losing out to Eintracht Frankfurt. And we all knew, didn't we, when we all watched that final between Frankfurt and Rangers, had we played Rangers, with the greatest of respect to them, had we played them, we would have been Europa League champions. And that would have meant that we could have ended up in the Champions League, and also because our form dipped in the Premier League, we kind of missed out on a Champions League spot as well, because we slipped down to 7th. Look, many would recall that Moyes was talking back then in that January window about wanting to get players in, and he talked about how we've moved away from almost like, I don't want to call it bargain basement players, but it looked like Moyes was suggesting back then that we were looking for different types of players in order to continue elevating us in Europe and in the league. But it didn't materialize. We were apparently after the likes of Darwin Núñez, who was at Benfica at the time, who ended up at Liverpool. We were apparently after Luis Diaz of Porto at the time, who also ended up at Liverpool. And of course, as many of you will know, we were also interested. David Moyes made no secret of his interest in trying to bring Kalvin Phillips to West Ham United, who at the time was at Leeds United, and they were fighting for their Premier League survival. And Phillips didn't want to go anywhere. He wanted to stay with Leeds United in order to try and keep them safe from the drop, which they did in that season. Now, we apparently offered £50 million for Kalvin Phillips in that window. And we tried to revive our interest in the summer 2022 transfer window. But, of course, when a team like Manchester City come knocking, and even though they were paying lower than we offered, it was a bit of a no-brainer, really. So he went to Manchester City in the summer of 2022 for a fee of around £45 million. But 18 months later, Kalvin Phillips hasn't really done it at Man City. Okay, he suffered a serious injury that kept him out for a while. But in 18 months, Phillips has only made 31 appearances for Manchester City in all that time. And Gareth Southgate has recently said that in order to try, he likes Kalvin Phillips. He wants him to be part of the England squad for the Euros that are coming up in the summer. But he alluded quite heavily to Phillips really needed to play regular football. And I think that's probably what's made Phillips decide that finally it's time for him to go to pastures new. But at the same time, if Phillips is going elsewhere, he needs to be playing regularly. And West Ham United can give him that. Phillips is not going to be a bench warmer for us. He's going to be in the team in some manner. Now, I talked about what sort of formation we're likely to have with Phillips in the team. He can go with alongside Alvarez as a holding midfield too. There's a possibility that Alvarez could drop to the back, maybe playing three at the back in order to allow Phillips to play the holding midfield role. But I think my gut, and I think most people's guts feelings are that he will play alongside Alvarez in holding midfield, which will allow our attacking players further ahead of them to actually be a little bit freer, especially playing the counter-attacking football that Moyes wants to play. Look, the big concern, of course, with Kalvin Phillips is, will he stay fit? I mean, when he was at Leeds United, he missed 16 games because of injuries. When he was at Man City, that was through hamstring injuries, by the way. When he was at Man City, no sooner did he sign for them than he missed 18 games in total because of a shoulder injury. So here's hoping that we do get the best out of him when we confirm him on Thursday, later today, or on Friday as a West Ham player. Look, apparently he's due to have his medical on Thursday. Some people are already suggesting that he had the first part of his medical on Wednesday and the second part is likely to be on Thursday. My understanding is the first part is today and the second part is likely to be on Friday. And with that, I think he'll be announced as a West Ham player probably on Friday afternoon, something like that, if not sooner. And that means, of course, he's eligible to play against Bournemouth when we host them next Thursday at the London Stadium. Look, the 28-year-old defensive midfielder will sign a loan deal. I know there was an awful lot of speculation about, what sort of deal it would be, but we will have an option to buy Phillips rather than an obligation to buy him. However, with his weekly salary being around 135, 140,000 pounds a week, there has been a suggestion that we would not be able to afford to keep Phillips beyond the end of this season. Now, look, I'm not so sure that stacks up. If we were willing to offer Declan Rice 200 grand or more a week in order to stay at West Ham United, then if Phillips does prove himself over the next 6 months, then I can't see many reasons as to why we wouldn't give him or we wouldn't want to have the player to stay long term. He's a good footballer. He's had injuries. Yes, he has. Was it silly of him to go to somewhere like Man City? Well, he's a Champions League winner. He's a Premier League winner. He's won a load of trophies. But playing time, was he ever really going to get the playing time that he would have desired? I guess when he first signed, he must have thought that he would definitely be a permanent fixture in the Manchester City side, but that hasn't turned out to be the case. So I think he'll certainly add something to West Ham. He'll certainly add a lot of steel to the side, alongside Alvarez in midfield. I think it will help us to control games a little more in midfield. And especially, like I said, in our counter-attacking play, he'll be much more suited. He's got an excellent range of passing and he's got good technical ability. And he'll certainly help with that. With Alvarez's, I don't want to call it more bruiser type physical approach, but the two will actually complement each other in midfield because of their different style of play. As I said, having Phillips in the team will also help our attacking players to be a little freer further up the pitch. Plus, the experiment of having used Ward-Prowse and Soucek as kind of holding midfielders whilst Alvarez has been out injured hasn't really worked, has it? It hasn't really sort of given us that. It hasn't galvanized us in midfield. So all credit to David Moyes at the weekend against Sheffield United for having brought Ben Johnson on to demonstrate that when we've got someone that can control the midfield, it works better for us. But who's going to drop out to accommodate Kalvin Phillips? That's going to be an interesting conundrum. I think by the time we host Bournemouth in a week's time, we will have Mohamed Kudus back. We will definitely have Mohamed Kudus back. We'll possibly have Lucas Paqueta back from international duty and injuries, respectively, which will create competition for the starting 11. Look, Alvarez at the moment is out with a calf injury. We're aware of that. But it's not considered to be bad enough to keep him out for too long. And even he is likely to be back for the Bournemouth game. So I've got a feeling that, as mentioned before, Alvarez playing alongside Phillips in central midfield will probably mean that, of all people, Thomas Souček is the likely to be the player that will be dropped to the bench. I think it's going to be interesting to see, but it all depends on what David Moyes does with his formation. Because if Moyes does revert to a three at the back, then I think we can actually see someone like Alvarez dropping into the back, maybe alongside Zuma or Mavropanos or whoever. And then that will give Moyes the option of keeping Souček in the team. So I think it's going to be interesting to see. But one thing is for certain. If it does work for Kalvin Phillips, he's still got several years of offering, playing at the highest level. And I think it could be quite a smart move that David Moyes has done. He's tracked him for several years. Like I said, he was tracking him back in 2022. He was tracking him way before that as well. And it looks like David Moyes has finally got his man. And let's hope he can deliver what we know he's capable of delivering. What else have we got? Well, next up is, of course, young Ibrahim Osman of Norwegian club FC Nordsjælland. Now, look, I talked about this player a couple of weeks ago, and I did say I suggested that I cannot see a reason or a way as to why he would likely to be a top priority for West Ham. You may remember me saying that there are several positions that I thought we needed to strengthen on in this window. One of them was in central defence, and the other was in attacking left side of midfield. Now, ironically, as I've already said, getting Phillips in could actually help us with our defensive issues by dropping Alvarez at the back. But is Osman what we need on the left side of attacking midfield at this moment in time? Or is he an investment for the future? If the latter, then it makes perfect sense why we're going to spend money to bring him to West Ham United now. At a rumoured value of about £15 million, many are suggesting that this 19-year-old has a massive future ahead of him if he becomes anything near to what Mohamed Kudus is at this moment in time. Now, that would be one hell of a player that we'll have on our hands, not to mention a player whose value will increase pretty quickly. It's suggested that the value of the 23-year-old Mohamed Kudus has only, given that he's only been with us for a short period of time, has already more than doubled in value. We bought him for 35 million pounds. Apparently, it's rumoured now he'll be worth over 70 if we were to sell him on the market. So it's quite possible that Osman's value can increase in that short period of time as well. But will he actually get game time under David Moyes or under any manager that might have been managing West Ham United at the moment? Or is it because we're bringing him in because of as a future prospect? Look, I suggested in the show I did a couple of weeks ago that it's quite possible that Osman could go into the under-21 development squad, possibly for the rest of this season, and let's see what happens beyond that. Now, when the senior source was apparently asked about Osman, any updates, he stated that we do not talk about ongoing transfers, which seems to suggest that a deal is very likely to take place. Now, usually in the past, when I've asked Sean, what's the latest gossip, etc., usually there'll be a message back saying, oh, he's one of a number of players that we're looking at and stuff like that, quite vague. But in this particular case, that's not what's been said. we don't talk about ongoing transfers. So it looks like quite possibly that Osman is going to become a West Ham player not before too long. Look, there are about half a dozen Premier League teams that are looking at him. Brentford apparently are interested. Brighton, Crystal Palace, Fulham are hovering. But our main challenger is Arsenal, who have also scouted the young player. However, from my understanding, is that we're leading the race to get him to sign, and I would virtually guarantee it's got an awful lot to do with Mohamed Kudus as well, given the fact that he's already up the club, given the fact that they both developed at the same academy, and of course, Tim Steidten will be doing a very good job at selling the positive project at West Ham United that he will believe Osman can be a part of. And I'm sure Osman will look at West Ham and certainly look at Kudus and think to himself, well, he's doing exceptionally well. If I can reach that level, there's no reason why I can't either. His current Nordsjælland manager has said about him, he is fast. He's a fast winger and a striker. I've got huge expectations for him. People can probably figure out that there is a player who is a really good player for us in the Norwegian Super League, who might really be hard to keep at the club. So I think, the Norwegian club are also speculating that he's likely to leave anytime soon. But what will the player bring to West Ham United? He's been highlighted as one of the top 10 young generations of footballers to be the next big things. He's developed at the Right to Dream Academy. I mentioned that Mohamed Kudus did as well. He joined Nordsjælland in January 2022, and he's seamlessly become an integral part of the first team. He spent a very, very short amount of time in the development squad, the under-19s, and in the reserves, but he was quickly promoted to the senior team after not soon after he signed for them. He can play anywhere across the front three. He can play on the left side, on the right side, or in an attacking midfield, or as a striker. But he's been mainly used as a left-sided winger. So I guess, when you think about the position he plays, the position that we need, it makes sense. But it's his experience that I'm kind of questioning. It's not that I don't think he'd be able to make it. That's not the case. But we know what David Moyes is like. He's quite cautious with young players. He's quite cautious about throwing them into the deep end. And his stats, Osman's stats this season, don't suggest really that he's stand out in any way. I'm not saying that he hasn't got skill and he hasn't got potential, but so far he's made 39 appearances for the club, of which 29 have been this season, and he scored 4 goals and 5 assists this season, which isn't bad, but given that it's his first full season for the club. He's got an average pass success rate of 77%. He's got an average player take-on rate around 45%. And of the goals that he scored, one has come in the league, a couple have come in the Europa Conference League, and one has come in the Danish Cup. So clearly there's something there about him, but he's not quite smashing it as we're kind of led to believe in the league. Look, did I say Danish Cup? Yes, Nordsjælland, wherever that is in Scandinavia. So as I said, Norwegian, sorry. As I said, I cannot get my head around this one, and I'm convinced he's more likely to be a player for the future rather than an asset that's going to come into this side immediately. I mean, it's possible. It's quite possible he'll be given a bit of game time. But I don't know. Something just doesn't ring true about this signing. I'm not suggesting that we're not going to sign him, but if we do, I wouldn't be surprised if he actually goes into the under-21 development squad. And you know what that's gonna do. If he goes into the under-21 development squad after we'd paid £15 million for him, fans are going to be up in arms. Typical David Moyes, typical that he won't use the young players, etc., etc. But when I think about some of the players that we've got in our development squad, the likes of Callum Marshall, the amount of game time or not so much game time that Divin Mbama has been getting. And then I look at someone completely fresh from the outside, not even playing even Premier League 2 standard when he playing for Nordsjælland. When I look at that, I keep asking myself, it doesn't balance out. You know, what we need are players in this transfer window to make an immediate impact. You can see that from why we would get Phillips in, because he would come in. He's got Premier League experience. He will play straight away. I can't see that with Ibrahim Osman. I can't see that he would be an immediate. He'll be of immediate use into the senior squad. I could be wrong. I hope I am. I hope he proves me wrong. And that's, he'll come all guns blazing. But there's something about this that just doesn't sort of sit very well. Yes, we may be in for him, but will he be a player that Moyes would use immediately? That bit I'm not sure about. Right, of course, there are other players that we're still rumoured to be looking at moving on in this window. You know, there's still rumours about Said Benrahma, Naifa Gerd, and Maxwell Cornet primarily. Danny Ings, okay, he had one good game, and I'm not suggesting off the back of that all of a sudden all is well. But Danny Ings may be kept, as in the squad to give it some depth. Ben Johnson. I think Ben Johnson has demonstrated, not just in the last game, but over several games, that he might be worth keeping on as well. But if we do allow any of these players to leave, then my understanding is for a Naifa Gerd, for example, if he does go in this window, Naifa Gerd, there'll be a replacement that we've already got our eye on who we'd want to bring in. Now, I think what will happen with the Gerd is he'll be told to knuckle down. We know he wants to leave, and then we'll deal with that in the summer. And in the summer will suit us better as well, because not only would we have him in the squad as cover, but we'll probably get a better price for him in the summer window than we would in a rush sale in January. But of the players that are going to looking at leaving in this window, the likeliest one is going to be Benrahma. And there's many suggestions there's many rumours to suggest that he's already bid farewell to the rest of the squad. Look, I told you last week or the week before about the house he was in, living in Essex. That's gone. He was renting that out, but apparently now that's on the market. So the owner's selling that, and so he's moved out of that. There's a suggestion, very strong suggestions that French clubs are likely to be signing him over and beyond any of the Premier League teams that are looking at bringing him in. Look. Before the Bristol City game, before he got sent off, there was an offer from Marseille, but it was a loan offer. And at that time, we were looking at permanent deals only. It's my understanding now that we would accommodate a loan offer so long as there's an obligation to buy. Because what we're looking at doing is to get a chunk of our money back on Said Benrahma, which is likely to cover the signings of Kalvin Phillips and Ibrahim Osman. So we're looking at getting anything between 15 to 20 million pounds. Now, I forgot to say, by the way, the whole Phillips deal, or this £7 million loan deal, plus his wages, etc., is not quite right, from my understanding. The deal was likely to cost us around £6 or £7 million in total, of which there's around about £3 million in wages, plus another £3 million for a loan. And then, of course, if we sign Osman for around 15 million, that means we're going to need up to about 21 million pounds to cover our costs. Look, will we get that for Benrahma? I don't know, but it will certainly cover the most of it if we sell him outright in this window, or if we sell him with an obligation to buy, which would be at around about, there'll be maybe a million or two in a loan deal, plus another 15, 16 million in a permanent deal. What about some other stories? Well, there are loads of other stories, aren't there? And I mentioned one or two of them in my weekly show earlier on this week. Of course, there's a link to Victor Bonifaci of Bayer Leverkusen, but how can it be? He's out till around about April. He's got an injury, an abductor injury, so he's not going to be back anytime soon to be sold. There was a new rumor today about German international Florian Neuhaus of Borussia Mönchengladbach. another holding defensive midfielder. But given the fact that we were about to sign that Kalvin Phillips is across the line, I don't think this is going anywhere in itself. Now, there are other rumours, of course, with the two Asian right backs, Yukinari Sugawara. I should have learnt it by now. Yukinari Sugawara of AS Alkmaar. And there was also Korean international Jung Woo Sol. But those rumours have gone quiet already. And then, of course, the rumour I talked about again about a couple of weeks ago was Jota, ex-Celtic player, who now plays for Al Ittihad. Well, he doesn't play for Al Ittihad. He's signed by them. He's getting around about 200 grand a week from them. But because of the foreign player rules, he's not getting any game time. So, yes, he will be looking for a club. But 200 grand a week, I doubt very much we're going to sign him for. That's it. In all honesty, the only real sort of strong links are Phillips and Osman coming and Benrahma potentially leaving. You hear an awful, it kind of feels airtime, doesn't it? You know, when people talk about every single potential signing that there is out there. But like I always say, many of them don't have an awful lot of credence to them. Thank you all for watching. Do hit the like button and the subscribe button if you're new to the channel, and also hit that bell notification to let you know when I'm next on. Really appreciate you watching. Thank you all for your time. Do leave some comments about the stories that you heard, and I'll see you all very soon.